To start examining price controls, we're going to look at a particular market, the market for student housing. Let's imagine that we're talking about Ashland, particularly while Ashland University requires most of its students to live on campus in dorms, etc. Let's imagine if that wasn't the case. Imagine that most students were allowed to live off campus. What would this market for student housing look like? Well, it seems natural to say that there would be a downward sloping demand curve. At really high prices for off-campus housing, people would choose to live on campus instead, and as the price fell, more and more people would choose to live off campus. So downward sloping demand curve is pretty easy. How about the supply curve? Is that really upward sloping? Well, this is a little less obvious, right? Because there's a temptation to think, hey, there's just a fixed supply of off-campus housing. Thinking back to just before the midterm, we looked at price elasticities of supply. And so you could imagine this is a situation in which supply is perfectly inelastic, that there's just no extra housing available regardless of the price. But I don't think that's right. See, if the price of student housing goes up a lot, then there's things that people who own existing housing can do to increase the student housing. We could, for example, turn an existing single-family home into a duplex or a triplex where students could live in it. We could make sure that stuff that's going into disrepair gets repaired so that it's available for students to live in. We could even rent out parts of our house, you know, a basement, say, or a room above a garage. Things like this could be rented out to students if the price was right. And so what that's going to mean is that the demand curve's not going to be like very, very shallow. It's still going to be pretty steep, but it will be upward sloping. And so maybe it might look like this. We've got a, pretty flat downward sloping demand curve and a relatively steep upward sloping supply curve. Where they cross in the middle here is our equilibrium, which in this market that I've just made up, we've got an equilibrium price of 2,500, equilibrium quantity of 1,800 rooms.